we're embedded in the rules of a chess game that's already been laid down, as it were, and we're kind of having to operate within those rules. But we're not the very author of the chess game itself and the rules by which it operates.
Yes.
If we were, I mean,
But I worry about the feasibility, though, because I see the objection, but even when you articulate, well, why wouldn't God decrease suffering by 50 or 80%? I'm not sure exactly what that means. Like, you could get rid of half of all animals. That would decrease the suffering by 50%. You could dull their senses by 50 or 80%. But then could they function? Because I see your concern, Joe, like, well, God's making the rules of the game. But it could be the case that creating animal life has these necessary elements in it, provided God does not excessively interfere with the system itself. So, for example, I mean, suppose it wasn't evolution. Suppose God created all animals in their final forms, like they are today, and they existed for billions of years and never underwent evolutionary change. Seems like the problem would still remain. You'd have predation, you'd have disease, you would still have all those bad things. There's just no evolutionary mechanism. It's just kind of always been. It seems like there's something more direct about animal life that is the problem here.
I guess it depends what specifically we're thinking about. I mean, there are different things to disentangle here. Are we focusing on, is it the fact that God used this almost like as a means by which to bring about creatures? And, you know, it seems as though he's maybe intending, maybe foreseeing but not intending, you know. But is that what we're focusing on, or are we focusing on just the suffering inherent in the process? Is it God's directing of the process that's the problem? The way that I see it, it's just a matter of prediction. So, like, yeah, okay, maybe there are these necessary connections, maybe, but I mean, conceivably, epistemically, it definitely could have been otherwise. I mean, maybe they just have some sort of built-in anesthetic, such that when the zebra just gets the claw from, or whatever, gets like the teeth from the lion, some sort of built-in anesthetic, like, I don't know, there's some sort of psychophysical law that just kicks in, and they don't feel any suffering, but, you know, that the lion can still have its meal and so on.
But here's where my problem comes. I noticed I had the qualifier that God does not excessively interfere in the system.
Well, these are psychophysical laws built in from the get-go.
No, because normally when an animal experience, any of us, we're animals, when we experience pain, it motivates us to act in an extremely aggressive way to promote our own survival. So what if in some circumstances when an animal is attacked, that immense amount of pain is what allows it to escape the attack and then to go on living? And so then you'd say, well, maybe there's a psychosocial law where the animal doesn't feel pain when there is no possibility for escape. It's like, but there's no real biological mechanism. Right. It would seem like God would end up having.
God is an omnipotent being.
But that's what I think.
Yeah, but then he'd be interfering.
That's my point.
He could have set it up differently from the get-go with different rules.
What I'm saying is God creating a natural system will inevitably entail things that are more or less perfect in competition with each other. I worry that the concept of animal, pain, for example, like God could create animals, you know, instead of having pain, what if we just had a heads-up display that told us, hand is burning, move hand? Well, a lot of us would ignore the heads-up display, and, you know, our hand would become useless, you know? So this seems to be, what I worry, the parallel here would be like, well, why can't God make people that are free but don't do evil? We qualify humans so much they're not really human or free anymore. Why can't God make animals that don't suffer in a natural ecosystem? It gets changed and qualified so much they're not really animals. They're more like furry robots that God's like sending around. That's my concern.
Well, to me, it seems almost like a limitation of imagination. I mean, this is an epistemic argument, so I don't need to say that these are actually metaphysical possibilities. But so long as I can, so long as they're epistemically open, so long as I can conceive of these various other ways that reality could have been, we can factor that into our Bayesian analysis. And it really seems as though God could have set up psychophysical laws that really are really highly finely tuned in this sort of way, where God has infallible foreknowledge of the various ways that things are going to go on. Surely he could have this precisely fine-tuned psychophysical laws that connect the suffering states that the organisms are in and their physical states, where it is actually privy to whether or not they're going to survive and so on. And okay, even if that makes them different than the animals that we do in fact have, my point then would just be, why not create, rather, I won't put this as a question because questions aren't arguments. My point is, it's more surprising that God created animals as we see them rather than animal star, like the ones that we are describing in this other epistemically possible scenario. That would be more expected under theism, the animal's star, than we see animals.
would you be? I'm curious if your eyes will roll or your response would be to a defense saying, "How do we know Animal Star doesn't exist right now?"
Yeah.
Because it's very difficult to determine the inner lives of anything, much less animals.
That is true. That's true.
And there is some, and I like risk being taken the wrong way here when I explain this, but there are like when you've seen, I've seen videos of like animals being like ripped apart, like on Reddit and stuff, just randomly, like a nature channel, and it's something like it's actually very strange. Like sometimes you'll look at the animal and they look peaceful, like they're being ripped apart, and they're just like sitting there like this, just like getting their leg like ripped off. And it's weird, like so. I don't know how.
Other times though, they definitely don't look peaceful.
I think
so.
Yeah.